Mayday analysis incoming.
Let me into my zone. Please don't let me into my zone. 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 Please don't let.
Welcome back to Crown's Crypto Cave. It is the first day of May, aka May Day, and I want to be wishing you well first and foremost on this new month, the month that couldn't come at a sooner date. And there's plenty to talk about today, not just with the higher term timeframes as we get a new monthly, but also especially the lower term timeframes, because after these volatile moves, the ranges get so big that the opportunity in the lower term timeframes I think is quite seductive. So there's going to be a big focus on that during this video. We'll talk about the higher term timeframes as well, but realistically, this is one of those funner times in Bitcoin land. So with regards to that, I do want to say that do we want to look at the CrownTrade application? Yeah, let's go look at the CrownTrade application. It's right there. It's right in front of your very face. It can be found at app.crowntrader.net. It is free, and the open interest chart is live. It'll be receiving another update actually tonight, I believe it is, as our developer lives in Canada, so that's his time zone. You'll notice that most updates come around Friday, and then maybe another one later in the weekend. So if you actually just click on the open interest chart right here, you can actually get it right in front of your very face. This one's going to be beautified in the next update, and more importantly, there is something of interest going on here because we don't really see any sort of major change of behaviors from the open interest reading, just still showing about 661 million. So a lot of this being done by the spot market. And then more importantly, with the open interest, it does sort of align with the higher term time frame analysis that we'll get into a little bit later. But what we really would have expected to see as Bitcoin heads back above that 9,000 Vegeta Mimi level is open interest to like shoot up, 100 million plus alongside breaking that level. So I'm still looking for a read like that to kind of confirm or not confirm, more long-term price action. But as it stands right now, it is of interest, and we'll get into that just a little bit later when we line it up with the actual price action analysis. Other than that, all the top end metrics are real steady from yesterday to today. It looks like Bitcoin DOM is still kind of taking a little bit of a leg up from earlier this week into the mid 65% region, which tells me that we'll actually get into the chart later, but I was bullish on that earlier this week, and I do believe that I'll still be bullish on it now. We'll check on that one again, and then the crypto fear and greed index right in over here, still one of the more long-term bullish things to me. As Bitcoin continues to kind of climb this wall of worry, the market remains more or less fearful, kind of hanging out at a 40 read right now. You'd have really expected this if this, if this was kind of like if this was perhaps more of a trap, that people would be getting more greedy and whatnot, as it seems to be operating as intended thus far. So still hanging around there does make me consider, and does sort of align with the higher term time frame analysis as well, but we'll get into that in just a bit here. So I think it's time to get into the actual price action here, and we can start off with the lower term timeframes. As I said, we did get that pullback that we were speaking about yesterday down to the 8,700 to 8,600-ish region, right down around here. Actually, I have it a little bit lower, and now bouncing up a little bit, looking like we're going to be putting in a higher low on this 4 hour. And to me, that's likely to beget a little bit of short-term continuation back up to the top side of the range. I'm curious if we have any sort of divergences to be aware of here. I'm sure that the hourly does have a little bit of hidden bullish divergence, it looks like, between this point and this point back here, although maybe a little bit too far away from each other to really care. But regardless of that fact, does look like Bitcoin wants to pop back up towards 9,100, 9,150-ish region after yesterday's nice little pullback. So short-term ranges are pretty fucking massive. Again, that's a $300 range, even on like an hourly, which is interesting. Looking at the hourly Stokes, we do see that they're headed straight up. They're very, very erect. 2 hour bi-hourly Stokes looking like they want to cross up as well. And they will cross up if we do close this next 2 hour dildo anywhere above 8,800, which Bitcoin's about $3 above right now, but you'll see that in the next 7 minutes and 23 seconds. So we'll be able to watch this one together. But looking like we'll get the follow through on that as well, and a little bit of hidden bullish divergence here too. So, I do think that 91 to 9150-ish region likely in the short term, and 3 hours of following through here too. Yep, looks like another higher low, and we will remain to the downside on this one as long as we're below 90.25. But if that short-term time frame range does get hit, well, that'll pull those babies back up. And do we have the same sort of potential hidden bullish divergence here? No, actually, no, that is not present there, but perhaps present, or sorry, it's not going to be present on the 4 hour either, if that is the case for the 3 hour. And for the 4 hour, we actually, funnily enough, only need to close above 9,000 or a little bit below 9,000, as opposed to the 3 hour, which was about $30 higher, in order to cross those momentum oscillators back up to the upside. But as it stands to me, Bitcoin's very obviously going to try to put in a higher low here on the lower term timeframes. Searching for my words right now, and I do think that we're getting ready for likely another pop back up, a little bit above 9,000, probably 9,100 to 9,150-ish region, and then play out a range likely over the weekend. So what does that mean for the medium and higher term timeframes? Well, let's go check them out right now. 12-hour closed as, or sorry, not the last 12-hour, obviously, but the one before that. This guy right here, the one that we were kind of working on yesterday during yesterday's video, did close as somewhat of a long-legged doji dodo, if you want to call it that, which is a sign of indecision, perhaps even reversal, and we did take out the low of it, while momentum oscillators are actually turning back down around here as well. We do see 12-hour Stokes coming back down pretty damn hard, and they will remain to the downside as long as Bitcoin is essentially below the last prior high. This one's showing 9,300-ish region pretty much to the T. We also do see that the Joule is starting to fire off some warning signals, although it's not a signal in and of itself. And by the way, there's going to be a big update for the Joule probably in like the next month or two. I was just speaking with the developer himself, and he's going to be able to code an algo that will essentially fire off warning signals of when to pay attention to what time frame on what asset for the Joule, which is going to add tremendous value to that. So for all the people who actually have it right now, you're going to be just grandfathered into that, and then over time we'll figure out what makes sense over time as far as managing that. But for right now, I do think that this is rather interesting here as Bitcoin looks to me like it's going to try to hold a range at a higher term level, which will only be decided on probably by the time that we get the new weekly. So for right now, I would just be looking for a range between our current low 8,400 region and about 9,150-ish region, and then that should probably take us over for the next day or so. Anyways, what else do we see as far as the 12-hour goes? Yes, indeed, we saw the culminating event of a 2-month-long contraction phase in historical volatility percentile. Absolutely fucking beautiful. One of the few times this is what really spurned on my last minute trade, not my last minute trade, but my trade right around here, just buying some premium, buying the straddle and spreading the puts. Right before that big breakout. Very rarely do I do something like that, but if you are an options trader, these scenarios don't come around all that often, and when they do, they're usually pretty high quality. So that's why I took that trade to follow up with all the people in the options program right there. And I actually think that this is going to continue to expand here. We are seeing it come back to the 50 marker right here, which, think about this from a percentage or percentile wise perspective. It means that we are not actually all that crazily overdone, and it's not so relevant to think that this is, the culmination of this move thus far for this time frame, to be very specific. To put this in perspective, for the last few times that we've gotten a signal like this after a 2-month-long contraction phase, well, back on over here from December 2019 to February of 2020, we do see somewhat of a similar read, although not as aggressive actually, and this precipitated the next $4,000 move to the upside from about 7,000 to 10,500, it looks like. Before that, we have a few other examples, perhaps going all the way back to, I believe, start of 2019 as well, back here. Yes, indeed, we do. And then also, late 2018 to start of 2019 right here from November 2018 to the actual low right here in January, early January. It looks like on this spike low before basically a 4x move from about 3,500 to 14,000 right around here over the next few months. Now, it's not always going to be that great, but I just do want to show that this typically holds a lot of weight for the long term. So when we're so realistically, when we're seeing like this first major move to the upside, this first $1,000 or $1,500 move to the upside, I do think that it's relevant to look at this as likely to try to create a higher low first and foremost. Now, with regards to that, remember we do have a new monthly, and the monthly I think reveals a lot as far as the higher term time frame range goes. So looking at it right here, what do we see? Well, Bitcoin did close above all major moving averages on the monthly, which is overall good, but we didn't necessarily close above the last monthly local high, which would have been an obvious bullish trigger for a move back up to about 11,000, maybe even beyond there to 11.5 region, and that's where things can really change for like the super macro, if you want to call it that. That's when that's when like the true moon boys really do get to have their rejoice. But for right now, you do see that there was a clear rejection yesterday from that last little prior high, but Bitcoin closed above all major moving averages, I do think bodes well, and I do think that the overall interpretation of this is going to be more or less bullish. But a range has been created now, and and I think that it's actually quite obvious here. Any sort of a move between the 20-minute exponential moving average and the last little high that we had right here at about 9495 is within that range and doesn't really resolve anything but maintains the former bias, which in this case would actually be to the upside. And I actually do think that Bitcoin is very likely to, at the very least, test down to the 10 simples in the low 8,000s. And if things get a little bit crazier, I actually do think that is quite possible. We will see a test down to about 7,600, right around the 20-minute exponential moving average as well. Although that should be a bounce this month. The resolution of this, however, if it is going to be bullish, you want that to happen sooner rather than later. If this drags on to the next month, it's not a death sentence, but after that, it does start to get a little bit stale, if you want to call it that, as far as this looks. But for right now, if Bitcoin did come back down to the mid 7,000s or 7,600, whatever it ends up being, I would actually be looking to be a buyer there for, at the very least, a very nice bounce, probably back up to the mid 8,000s, and that's just sometime this month. Again, when we're talking about the lower term timeframes, they are obviously related to the higher term timeframes, which we started off with on the lower, but it's, is it relevant to today's price action? No, it's not at all. And in fact, we can actually start to mark off some areas which would really align with a bias of looking for a move back down there. And we can go back to our BitMexican chart, put on our drawing tools like this, and realistically the same area that we had marked off yesterday is relevant here, which is also aligned with the 21 exponential moving average now. So as long as Bitcoin's above this 80, what is this level right here, 8450-ish region, I have a $50 blue box between about 8450 to 8500-ish region. As long as Bitcoin's above there, I don't really see any like major pullback. But if Bitcoin does lose that area, I would look for a move back down to about 7800-ish region, 7700-ish region, test around the monthly support, and probably about very likely a bounce there. So until that happens, I'm not really looking for a move like that to transpire. And as it stands right now, Bitcoin looks like it's going to give another try to the upside in the short term before playing out any sort of legitimate downside. And I'd look for this as the gatekeeper for that sort of short-term move, which a short-term move here can realistically be to the tune of like 600, maybe even $700 at an $8,000 price point, which is almost a 10% move. So this is opportunity fucking central right now. Again, not just for the options traders out there, but just for the spot traders as well. This is beautiful, or maybe not the spot traders, but the derivatives traders. If you're trading futures and whatnot, you can actually take advantage of those. Well, this is the time to be paying attention. I mean, this is the beauty of Bitcoin when it gives you all these major massive moves in a relatively short time frame. Anyways, as far as the top end goes, you can see that we did get, do you consider this a rejection of a test of our long-term trend line coming in here from the $14,000 high? You could say that, yes. It got pretty damn close yesterday. We did get up to about 9,500. I think I did say that we were going to get a continuation move to about 9,600 yesterday, and I consider that close enough right there. 94.81. I'm sure that someone's going to say, "Fuck you, Crown. It was wrong. It was $19 off." Well, fair enough, man. You're free to criticize me, and actually, I encourage you to criticize me. Although I can't promise that I'll respond all the time because, well, for obvious fucking reasons. Also, I would consider this a rejection of the 886 Fibonacci retracement right here. And overall, that really does align with validating this as our top end resistance for the time being. Now, there's a couple areas of obvious play here. So one would be that area from a daily closing basis, and we could call that, let's just call that on a conservative estimate, about 9,700. As long as Bitcoin's below there, not really too many interesting things to be looking at from a macro perspective. If Bitcoin does break above there and close above there on a daily little time frame, even just takes out yesterday's wick high, which is 94.81. Extremely likely we will see a continuation into the mid 10,000, like 10,500-ish region. That's where the higher term time frames start to take over once again, though. We would get obviously continuation on a monthly, and from a weekly basis, we would actually be in potentially making an uptrend. What do I mean by that? Well, we would officially have a higher high above this last what do we want to call this right here? Fake out from early February at the $10,000 region. So if Bitcoin could close weekly above there, that would be a big change in behavior. Technically speaking, you want to wait for a higher low to be put on the same time frame as well. But I would feel confident saying that, realistically, Bitcoin will very likely come back down and set in a higher low. But that next higher low is going to be a macro long-term buy before setting up for a move to 11,500. And then we get to play out the same game there as well for the long term. But with regards to that, we can now mediate with this once again with the monthly going back here and taking a look at the monthly accumulation distribution indicator, which I I look at only a few times a month because, well, realistically, it doesn't change all that much, but I'm curious to see what it did on that last tick. Did we flatten out the curve? Yes, we did. It is actually still a negative slope, which is concerning here. I was not expecting to see a negative slope. This is a completely fresh look on the charts for me, by the way. I try to get these my ideas as fresh as possible, for better or worse. I know for some people that's probably annoying because, well, you're gonna see me sort of, well, hopefully mature my ideas as time goes on. For some people, it's like, fuck you. You didn't say buy at this level or sell at this level. It's like, well, that's not trading. That's fucking crystal ball type shit, which is not what trading is about. Trading is about just finding these pivot points and making good statistical setups alongside with them for that over time are going to, well, give you an advantage, give you an edge, so to speak. Anyways, Jesus Christ, man, getting on that conversation already. So what I'm looking at here is a little bit strange. I was not expecting to see this. Now, I was expecting to see this actually completely get a positive slope if we were going to be obviously bullish from this region right here. So it would still say, hold your horses for now. I do feel quite confident with the range being constructed between about, 10,000 and 7,500 for this next month of price action. The question is, how do we close this next month? If we close above, if we close anywhere above 94, 9,500, I think that it's going to be very obviously bullish, and you will see a move, or I shouldn't say you will, but you will very likely see a move to about 11,000, 11,500, and that'll be the next big test for the macro, and things would look more or less, macro bullish at that point, as we would have reverted the monthly trend here. But it's a long month to go, especially with it just starting like literally today. So with regards to that, we'll go back to the lower term timeframes, because again, that's where I think all the fun stuff is happening. And let's start to mark it off a little bit more. I'm not really getting too much from the 4 hour because it's a little bit too new price action, but from the hourly, I do feel quite confident in this area right here between about 91, or let's actually get this right. It's going to be between about 91.50 and 91.90. So a little bit less than a $50 range right there. And I do think that Bitcoin's just going to be oscillating between essentially 80, what is this, like 84.50 or 8,500? We can say 8,500. And the top side of the range, this guy right here at about 91.50. Weekends coming up as well, so I would be just looking for liquidity hunts within this region. And if Bitcoin does break above, let's call this 9,200, just to be a little more conservative, I would look for another attempt back up towards towards the blue box right here of Destiny, actually, at that point, because it would be around 9,600. That would be meeting in with the long-term downtrend resistance, which I would probably be looking for another pushback on the next pull, which would also be considered a retest of the 886 Fibonacci retracement. So this is all kind of coincided with each other. And I do think that at that point, we're going to have to really consider the macro picture here, because if Bitcoin starts to close dailies above there, very, 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 very likely we will see 10,500 tested next. And at that point, I do want to take another fib retracement from our last major low to where that culminating event took us, which was the $14,000 level. And you can see actually now that it changes the perspective of it just a little bit more. We see that the 11,500 area is still very much respected as the weekly prior high. We also see the 618 currently kind of where the blue box is, right around about 9750, 9800-ish region. So I do like these areas a lot. There's a good confluence in there, so that really adds to the confidence in these areas as operating as macro areas. So Bitcoin does start to clear these guys. This is going to really lead into long-term changes of behavior as far as I'm concerned. By the same token, to the downside, the same sort of logic does apply, right? As if Bitcoin does break below 8,500, does that really do anything? It breaks to 0.5. That's not a huge deal, but I would at the very least look for a move down to about 78, 7900-ish region, which that's a significant move at this price point. I mean, that's that's like $600, $700 move from that actionable point. I like that rather well as a trader. So with regards to that, I am actually changing up my option strategies a little bit here as Bitcoin does start to get a little bit more red, especially as as we kind of head into the weekend. So I'll probably be looking for positions somewhere in this region right here or somewhere in this region right here, probably either selling a call spread or selling a put spread, depending upon how this sort of formulates out. But I'd rather let theta work for me at that point, especially during a weekend, as we typically don't see shattering moves that break the medium term range, especially if they're contrary to the prior week's direction over the weekend. So that to me, is gonna kind of change my strategy there a little bit. Although what I really say it's a change of strategy. Realistically, the big change of strategy for me right here was actually buying premium. I fucking hate buying premium, but every once in a while, like I said, I will do it, and that was one of the few times, and it did happen to work out. But now I think it's time to maybe not be in that same mode. But of course, with options, there's a million ways to kind of organize your options trading. So I wouldn't say that that's going to be true for everyone. But for myself, given my sort of unique, or sorry, maybe not so unique, but different sort of trading perspectives, that's essentially how I'll kind of be changing that. So what else did I miss? I feel like I've missed something. We've been in this 20 minutes now. Let's go check out traditional markets really quick. Traditional markets also make me think that we likely play out some downside here. SPY looks short-term and medium-term toppy after rejection of the 200 exponential moving average at 295. So we did hit the 295 target from yesterday, and I do think that this one probably comes back down to like to the mid 280s today, probably like 284 region, and then we'll see where the weekly closes. I don't have any opinion after that. The weekly as it stands is interesting. If it closes anywhere below 291, I do still think that there's going to be medium-term downside here, as I've been saying. But do I think that the low is in on this? I do, actually. I do think that the low is in on this. I don't think that we're going to be going lower. I do think that we will play out some downside here in the medium term, probably come back down to like, the low, if it closes below 291, I do think that, over the next month, sometime in May, we'll come back down to like 265 region, maybe 260 region, and then probably play out another bounce, and then likely, reassess from there. Don't want to get too ahead of myself, but I do think that is rather interesting as it is right now. Let's go see how futures are acting, because they actually have been painting a pretty interesting picture overall, and futures selling off a little bit more than traditional spot markets in the aftermarket hours. We do see a very clear and obvious rejection on the 200 exponential moving average, and yes, that makes me a lot more confident. We will see SPY come back down to like the 284, 285 level, maybe even lower than that, all the way down to 2795 region right here. I think is actually quite possible today for E-mini futures. A little bit of a swing failure pattern here as well, potentially in progress as it hints at a breakdown below this last breakout point at 2863. It looks like momentum also is going to be turning down at the same time as well, and daily RSI doing the same thing right here too. Gonna lose the exponential relatively soon. So yeah, I do think that this is ready to play out some downside, but I want to be very clear in what I'm stating, that I don't think it's getting ready to like make new all-time lows or anything like that. I think it's ready to play out some downside, probably short-term, medium-term back down to at the very least 284, 285, but realistically, sometime in this next week, or sorry, I guess it would be next week because this week's almost over, sometime back down around the mid to low 260s, I do think is very, very likely, and then we'll reassess from there. Looking at Nasdaq futures, same thing, exact same thing right around here. I do think that we're getting ready for a move back down to like 85.50. I think we even have, nope, we don't have bearish divergence here present. Interesting, but I do, I would be looking for a bounce somewhere around the mid 8,500s, like 85.50ish region. Likely same sort of interpretation on the oscillators right here, coming back down from a high level, which is not a death sentence or anything like that, but I do think it's good for some short-term and medium-term downside. Same thing with RSI losing the exponential. I don't necessarily like that read for the short term, but that does not necessarily carry on to like the monthly look, which the weekly actually is in danger of closing pretty nastily. I do think that if the weekly closes anything like this below 8,800, we will likely set up for a move overall back down to like 8150ish region, and then see how that holds up. I'm curious how the monthly closed as well. The monthly closed very, very well. So I do think that any sort of move back down to like mid to low 8,300s probably does get bought back on up. Maybe at most, if things get really crazy, like 7,900 on NAS futures. But I do think that this is still okay here, at least for another month. I'd be looking for those areas to give a nice healthy bounce. However, it is worth mentioning that the monthly jewel on NAS futures that is a signal, to be fair. It's not like the exact picture perfect setup, but it's fucking good is what it is. It's hitting a lot of the bells and whistles for what I look for a damn good signal, and that does hold quite a bit of weight there. I'm curious if we see the same thing on E-mini futures. Yes, we do. What about SPY straight up? Yeah, pretty much it is. They're all showing pressure down. At least a little bit this month. I do think that we're going to be testing some downside. SPY back down to like mid to low 260s is certainly not out of the question. But like I said, I've been bullish on this one for a while. I think that now's the time to play out a little bit of a bounce, or sorry, not a little bit of a bounce, but a pullback, better said. Other than that, what else do I want to say about this? Daily Jewel is actually kind of like a counter signal to the monthly, as it's giving you a hodl your long signal right here. I always say this, man. Anytime that I disagree with a daily Jewel signal, I'm the one who's wrong. There's never been one single example of me being right and the Jewel being wrong, actually. Let's see if the same thing is happening on E-mini futures. Kind of, but weak. Nasdaq Futures kind of, but weak as well. So unless if today, unless if today closes back above like 9,000 on NAS and above, like, let's call it 290 on SPY, I do think that this does kind of lose a little bit of its luster here, and that'll just kind of turn down into the pink, and then we'll kind of come back and reassess it early next week. But for perspective, Japan's already down about almost 3% on the day, playing out a very clear, playing out a very clear reversal right here from yesterday to today, which is essentially what I'm looking for in U.S. markets as well. I think that Japan's kind of showing the way right now. But just like Japan's likely to bounce around this 19,400-ish level, I think that traditional markets will probably bounce in those lower range that we spoke about today in the short term, and then set up for next week to kind of play out a little bit more, probably to the downside as well, I do think. What else do we want to look at? Gold. Okay, I've been completely neglecting gold for the last few days, but gold looking to play out some downside as well. But again, same thing here. Like long term, I'm not bearish on this. I'm not bearish on this at all. I do think that it can come back down to low 1600s, but I'd be looking for a bounce there, and I'd look for another try for continuation sometime later this month or next month. Short term though, downside I do think is rather likely, back down to like 1640-ish region at the very least, maybe even down as far as like 1605, 1610-ish region. But I would be looking for bounces there as this one starts to like lose a little bit of its luster and weakens a little bit as well. The weekly is going to have a chance to have a potentially atrocious close, but I'll just wait until tomorrow until we actually like fully have that set in. But the weekly Jewel could be setting up here. It's not necessarily there just yet, but it's a potential. It's potential. So I'd keep an eye on that. If that does actually come through, that's going to supersede everything else that I say, and I'd be obviously bearish based upon that. What else am I missing? I feel like I'm missing a few other things. Do we want to look at some of the butyrols and the Litecoins of this world? Sure, why not? While we're here, butyrol is actually almost going to get a golden cross on the daily between the green and the purple. Pretty damn close, but not there just yet. The weekly looks more or less good here. Does it get another leg up to like 250-ish region? Looks within the cards. Let's see where this trend line kind of comes in. Something like this is what I'd be looking towards. Also, proverbially where the 200 simple and 200 exponential are trying to populate right now, although it's way too early to really judge that one. But yeah, they would be around the 250-ish region, so fair enough. What about Mrs. Litecoin? Mrs. Litecoin still looks bearish as fuck, actually. This is a really ugly chart, actually, on a monthly scale. I mean, this is just god awful here. If anything's really bearish, it's Mrs. Litecoin. But if Bitcoin goes up here, if Bitcoin even plays out some sideways, is Litecoin just going to shatter through the floor? No, very unlikely. They're all going to follow more or less what Bitcoin does, and they all kind of take semi turns leading each other. But Litecoin definitely the weaker of the bunch of the top three, if you still even consider them the top three. Very obvious resistance right around the 200 simple, as you'd expect, right around about $51. So I look for Bitcoin to set the tone, and then alts kind of follow, Litecoin not being as big of a beneficiary of that. Daily for CMEs, looking interesting here as well. If we do take out yesterday's low, which is 84.80, which I'm actually going to put an alert right now, I would look for, I'd look for another retest back down here. At the very least, 82.20. That's only like $250 lower. But realistically, probably back down to 8,000. That's when you're going to see Bitcoin come back down to like 7,900-ish region on spot, and I'd look for a bounce there as well. Nice little medium-term pivot for this market. Also kind of correlating with these Fibonacci levels here. Actually, a little bit lower than that if we're talking about the higher-term timeframes. However, let's go to the lower-term timeframes, see what they're suggesting here. And same sort of thing. is what I'm seeing. We actually do have more obvious hidden bullish divergence here being printed between this this set of points right here and what we're doing right now. So I do think that short term is going to pop back up probably around 91, 9200-ish region, give or take a few bucks, and then we'll reassess from there on the short term. So I do like CMEs for that right now, kind of suggesting that we're going to play at a little bit of a short term range here, back up to the upside. In fact, CMEs on a 12-hour look pretty damn good for at the very least another try to the upside to that 92 or sorry, I guess on CMEs they're playing with like about $100 worth of premium on spot price action. So CMEs trading back up to like 93.50 is going to be akin to spot markets back around 9200, 9250-ish region. So yeah, I do think it's getting ready for another move back up there short term, and then I use that as another short term pivot point. What else do we want to look at? Let's go look at the short term ranges. I'm curious what this would suggest. So again, very, very short-term ranges right here. I have, let's call it like 84.50 to the downside on a 4-hour total closure, or even like a 2-hour probably does it as well. I look for extension back down to about 79.50, 7800-ish region, this blue box right here, which is actually riding, hold on, this trend line does not look right. Yeah, I must have boofed that one up. That obviously is not right, but yeah, it'd be coming in right here, which is showing where, 78 to 7900. Okay, good. That's consistent. Jesus Christ. God damn it, man. It's getting confused there for a second, but also in alignment with the 200 simple and 200 exponential average, which I really do like. So overall, if Bitcoin did come back down around there, I'm curious of the probability of that. So we'll look at that in just a second. Just wanted to make sure that that's all good. And to the upside, the next sort of gatekeeper is, I'll have right around about 9200. If Bitcoin does take that out to the upside, even on like a 2-hour total closure, I would look for extension back towards the prior high and actually beyond. Any sort of a move above yesterday's high at 94.81 is a very clear and obvious continuation signal, at the very least up to about 96, maybe even 9700-ish region. So another $200, $300 continuation on top there, which I do like. So let's go see what the probabilities of these moves are right now. And come on, baby. There it is. By the way, the pig has the accumulation distribution oscillator as actually turning down right now, or potentially turning down right now. Interesting, but I'm curious, what does that look like on a monthly though? Because we're on a daily right now. Yeah, it's still up, and it's actually gonna be crossing the upside. Okay, so fair enough. All right, that's another indicator I'll have to get into at some later time. But right now, let's keep the focus here. So target of upper range probability, pretty fucking likely, 98.75%. No, we don't want to be looking at 8,000. We want to be looking at what was the number? Fuck, what was that number again? Let's call it 92. Okay, and for the downside, short term, let's call it 84.50. Nice little ranges here, as that's where it kind of like starts to change back once again. Okay, so top side probability, actually, this is interesting. So you've, for the last for the last 2 weeks, you saw consistently the probabilities of the short-term and medium-term upside range, and even the long-term upside ranges, be a lot higher than the probability of the similarly spec'd downside ranges. Now we've actually seen a difference here. We're seeing the upside probability be much less than the downside probability. In fact, showing 6.58% for the upside on today's daily total closure. That's a daily closure, by the way. Still like 17 hours away, 17 and a half hours away. The downside probability is actually rather high at just under 22% here, and that's the 84.50-ish region. So that would transpire that next move to the downside. So technically speaking, if bears do want to test a breakout, they very easily could. However, my personal opinion is that we're going to likely spike back up here, play out a little bit of a range between essentially 84.50 and what's it called, and in 9200. And what the fuck was that? And then sorry, I've just got like a random message and just screwed up my train of thought. I'd be looking for a range to be populated between these two areas right here. Alongside the weekend, we're going to probably get a spike up here, probably going to get a spike down here, and then come back right in the middle, as you've seen a million goddamn times. And then coming into next week, when we get the new weekly, probably have a resolution on that, and we'll wait for the weekend to pass by before that, as there's just too many variables to get into before we actually talk about that. But I do want to also look at the higher term time frame range. So remember, this is only relevant for the short term time frame. only relevant for the short term. But the higher term time frame ranges are actually not that far away either. To the upside, we have the descending trend line kind of meeting up with this blue box of death at around 9750-ish region. So I do want to see what the probability of that is. Although probably not going to be happening today, to be fair. And to the downside, below about 7700, things start to get a little bit nasty again. But I would say, just because that's a little bit too close for comfort, I would say 7,500 is actually a better measure of that for doom once again. Probably transpiring to move all the way back down to the mid to low 6,000s. Which if traditional marks do turn down, I'd say that's actually going to be a pretty damn good signal for that too. So let's see what this is. Just out of curiosity, which one is higher? Both extremely low. So, not happening today, most likely. I'm curious if maybe we went out to future, if that's going to change it at all. Probably not going to change it at all. Yeah, it's not going to do anything. Maybe if we did like 7 days out, perhaps. Let's see what that would show. No difference either. Maybe I have some of these settings wrong, perhaps. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so if we do look a week out, the upside is significantly higher probability right now, 31.5%. But realistically, I think the next driving continuation of the upside is actually very, very easily had right here by any sort of a move back above yesterday's high, which again is about 94.81 on Mexico. And let's see if that's consistent amongst all the major exchanges. We have 94.78 on GDAX. We have 94.85 and a quarter on stamps. So yeah, it looks consistent amongst all these, which I do like for Confluence. So overall, I think that's probably where I want to leave this video off. Just talking about the short term here, is I think that it is really, really interesting. I do think that Bitcoin is probably going to give another spike back up to this 9100, 9200-ish level right here. I don't think, I don't really have an opinion on whether it breaks it or not, but if it does, I would look for a retest I wouldn't even look for a retest of yesterday's high. I'd look for a new high. I'd look for extension all the way up to like 97 or 9800-ish region. By the same token, to the downside, a little bit more diabolical, but any sort of a move below yesterday's spike low, and I would look for extension to at the very least 7950-ish region. But technically speaking, I do like waiting for closures, as they do add more confidence to myself, and any sort of any sort of a 2-hour closure below about 8500 should likely do that as well. So ranges are big here, and impressive, and a lot of opportunity in the early morning hours, in the early May days. So with that said, I will be signing off. I probably won't be on Twitch today because I just realized that it's like kind of a national holiday in Finland. So we're having some company over. But tomorrow, Saturday and Sunday, oh baby, Twitch streams are fucking back, and they're gonna be long as hell, and I'm gonna be having a shit ton of fun. So really looking forward to that. Until then, I want to be wishing you well. Take care, and until next time.